What's happening, everybody? We've got a great conversation today. I'm here with my great friend, longtime friend, Brett Jennings, to talk about the fate of the real estate agent for 2020 and beyond, and the new landscape of real estate as we're finding ourselves with all the change that's going on. What's going on, Mr. Jennings? How are you today?
I'm excited to be here, man. I'm excited to be alive. I'm excited to be part of this change that's happening in real estate. And yeah, stoked to be reconnecting with you. I'm just checking out how you're you got what looks like the laboratory of a mad scientist behind you there with some awesome quotes.
It definitely is a mad scientist library behind me. That's for sure.
Yeah. No. And I see some things that were instrumental in my growth and how I've taken a page or two from your book. So still be part of the conversation today.
Yeah. So let's, where do we want to start this conversation? Obviously, we're both proponents of adding tremendous value to the home buying, home selling experience, and really trying to maintain our relevance in the landscape of real estate and be positioned as the go-to agent in a marketplace, and adding tremendous value to the real estate transaction. And we have a lot of disruptors, and as we always have. I don't think that since I've been in real estate, there hasn't been someone trying to disrupt the industry. But a lot of change has happened, and a lot more changes continuing to happen. And it looks like, there's some serious things to be considering about kind of where you want to be, where you want to be in this new economy of real estate, and where do you want to be positioned?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty exciting. I mean, and to kind of set a context, if I could, I want to go back to literally the day I got started in real estate. I remember I got my license. I started as a mortgage lender, I was a lender for about 6 months. And the first day I pivoted and flipped to becoming a realtor, I had a little bit of, uncertainty about becoming an agent. I didn't know if I wanted to be a realtor. And the very first day I went to this training, and the guy who spoke in front of the room was Alan Dalton from RIS Media, Real Trends. They do the top 1,000 Wall Street Journal.
Right.
And I'll never forget it, man, because it was a defining moment as I started in real estate and defined how I do the business and how I approach the business. But Alan Dalton stood from the front of the room, and he said one thing. And he said, the problem with the real estate industry is that the consumer feels that real estate transaction is simply a fee-inflated event to perpetuate an inefficient industry. And I was like, I thought about that for a minute. I was like, man, that sounds like we make too much money. And then the second thing he said was, real estate salespeople in the consumer's mind, if they evaluate them and rank them, were one step above a used car salesperson.
Right.
At that moment, it was kind of like an oh crap moment for me. I was like, I had a financial services business before I got in real estate, and it was a respected profession. And so now I was making my foray into this new world. And man, I was like, what did I get myself into, quite literally? But I made a decision at that point that I wanted to find a way to be an agent and deliver real estate service, in a way that the value that I brought was equal or far greater than the compensation I received. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, what that put me on, that mindset put me on a path to growth of just kind of wanting to be the best agent we could be, or I could be. And then ultimately it led your and I's path to cross. And so that was pretty cool. I remember in 2012, this was about, I guess, 3 or 4 years after I'd gotten into the business. And the conversation you guys were having is, hey, look, man, real estate is ripe for disruption. And here's what happens in industries that gets disrupted. The consumer's underserved. They think that the value's not there. And you're going to have these innovative business models that are going to come in and, whether it's like Expedia and Travelocity and take out the travel agent, or whether it was the stock.
Right. Yeah. E-Trade,
E-Trade, Ameritrade that took out the stockbroker, it's something like it is coming in real estate. And I remember, you saying that was 2012. This is almost 7 years ago. And now it is $7 billion later, most of it, $6 billion deployed, from these venture capital funds. And I'm from Silicon Valley, so I see all this stuff going on all around me. But it's real now. It's like the money's there, the technology's there, the people there, is the intent is there. Like these people mean business, quite literally,
Right.
and they're out to change it. I think, for people who sometimes wonder, yeah, we've had all this kind of stuff kind of banging at the real estate industry from the outside for a long time, but again, like $1 billion was deployed between 2012 and 2018, and $6 billion was deployed in the last few months. And to give people an idea of like how much money that is, guys, the most valuable real estate entity, like single entity, that we're aware of, is a company called Realogy NRT, right? They own Century 21, Sotheby's, Coldwell Banker. The value of that group is about $3 billion. Like commands 40% market share across the country. The value of that's about $3 billion. $6 billion, twice as much has been poured in. So like it's real. And I think, I want to talk a little bit about that today. I think the conversation we can have, Jay, that help people is, sometimes people kind of freak out. Hey, are we going to become irrelevant? Well, if you choose to be. And I think if you and I talk about this, and what's important for people listening is like, hey, this is an awesome time, because guess what? The players are on the field now. The field's been established, and we'll talk about what the scoreboard actually looks like now. Right. Because it's getting defined, and you can decide where you want to be on the field, and how much of this game you want to play, and how much money you want to take off the table. So, but dude, it's exciting times.
It is definitely exciting times. So let's talk a little bit about the players that are in the game today. Who do you feel are the major players that we have in the game today?
And I mean, I think,
full disclosure, we may disagree on some of this, right? So I think we may agree on on most everything. I think that's we're on the same playing field as far as that goes. But there is a chance that we may not agree with some of these potential disruptors, and that's okay, right? So
for sure,
right? Just full disclosure.
This is just spirited discussion, and to kind of give you idea on like where some of my thoughts and ideas about this are coming from. I'm not kind of sitting in an island out on my own in my own real estate brokerage. I've taken the time actually. I've met one-on-one with Robert Refkin, who's the CEO of Compass. I had the opportunity to meet and connect with Glenn, the CEO of the group that you're aligned with in leadership. There's a brilliant guy with EXP. I've met personally one-on-one with Gary Keller for two times in the last year about this conversation. And then most recently got an invite to spend time with about 100 of the thought leaders and movers and shakers in real estate, CEOs of big box brokerages, founders of real estate tech companies, and then venture capital in Palm Springs. So they did this thing called Inman Disconnect. Super cool. And we were just in a seminar. It was a conversation of these big minds in real estate about, hey, where's this going? What's likely to happen? Who are the players? And, what's the best outcome that can happen here for both agents, consumers, and the industry? Right. So to define, answer your question, like who are the players? It's pretty clear now. The big guys are on the playing field, and those big guys. If we were to define, like let's say the playing field is the real estate market, and down here, we'll call this the lower end of the market, and up here we'll call this the upper end of the market, and then right here in the middle we'll call that the median. So what we're seeing, right, is there's these different business models and different companies that have entered into the marketplace. Some of them you're familiar with that have been around for a while, like Redfin. I would say they're positioned down here below the median price, right? They do sell occasionally some stuff in the upper end, but for the most part, they are they are gaining market share. Year over year growth. They've had good growth year over year. The consumers like the consumer experience of that website and a discounted value proposition. They get some commission back, and I think when we look at Redfin, the other players that are getting positioned or on the playing field here is another company called Open Door. And I remember when I very first heard about Open Door, Jay, actually you and I were in a text message conversation. This was like 3, maybe 4 years ago. You're like, dude, check this company Open Door. Like it's the former founder of PayPal and some other tech guys. Like they're thinking about this thing about buying houses and then and so they really were kind of the first on the scene with the iBuyer model. And for anybody who's not familiar, the iBuyer business model in real estate is, hey, look, don't sell your house. on the market with a realtor, we'll look at the value on Redfin or Zillow, and we'll make you an offer, fair market offer, but instead of charging you 6% commission, we'll charge you 8%. So you effectively pay a 2% convenience fee for not having to go through the hassle of bringing it into market and having the uncertainty of when's it going to sell, if it's going to sell, what price am I going to get. So the iBuyers,
there's also in Open Door, and I believe the same with OfferPad, is there's like a 6 to 13% fee that's also charged, for once they do their inspections and all that kind of stuff. Is there not, or is it only?
I mean, as I hear about the execution of that business model in the marketplace, they do make up for some once they put that offer in, right? Because they will get inspections, and whatever those items are going to get deducted from the seller's net. And so yeah, that they are making up. That could bring the price down another 10% potentially. That's a point of exposure. But coming back to the conversation of who the players are, we know in this below the median price point, we got Redfin, we have Open Door. We also have other companies doing the same thing. OfferPad. Now Keller Williams is getting in the game. Most of the big box brokerages either are doing some kind of iBuyer model or they're partnering with one of these big groups. But what we're seeing from the market data that's coming out is, Open Door has been in your market, right? Jay, for about 3 or 4 years. I hear different stories about what actual percentage of market share they have, but somewhere between 10 and 14%. Is what I hear.
The 2018 numbers for OfferPad and Open Door were there were no markets that they were above 5% market share. So, and that was actually when they came to Dallas. We had a meeting with them when they first came, just because we were interested in the model, just because it looked like a legitimate threat, and they were doing really well in Phoenix. And so, we were looking online, and they had tons of property that they owned, that they had bought, and they were reselling. And in that conversation at that time, they were looking to get to 5% market share, and we're like, okay, well that's a reasonable, but they've become a very real part of the marketplace. And interestingly enough, Dallas is just one of those markets that that we're getting to deal with it on a pretty regular basis. Redfin right now is extremely aggressive with the 1% discount, billboards all over town. So they've become quite aggressive, which is always interesting for me, because if you got to spend the same money as me for that billboard to acquire a customer, then it's not your technology that's the reason people are doing business with you, and people aren't coming to you for the discount. So that to me questions the relevance of the of the model. There's always going to be someone that's going to go for a discount, but maybe if you got to spend the same money I do, then I believe that I can outmarket you if that's the case. For a customer.
I think for the sake of this conversation and looking at who the players are, we can agree that Redfin's out there, they're taking market share.
Sure.
Open Door is out there, they're taking market share. And some of these other iBuyers are doing the same thing or taking market share.
Right. When we look at would you group Zillow, OfferPad, Open Door, Knock, all of those are the in the iBuyer conversation. Plus, it seems to be like integrating into everyone else's model as well as a part of.
Yeah. Now what we're seeing is those companies are now using the realtor as a distribution channel to get in front of the customer or consumer. And you or I as agents can say, hey, look, we can bring you an offer from OfferPad. If you don't like it, we can bring it to market, and hopefully we get you a better number. So right. For agents who are thoughtful and intelligent, like instead of being afraid of what's new and what's coming, you figure out how to align it and use it to your best interest. That's one option. But I think when we look from a market share perspective, right, Redfin and these Open Door, OfferPad, I've heard as high as 14% market share for some of the iBuyers in certain markets. The best in these conversations we could garner is that not an option for everybody. Most people aren't going to opt for it, right? The average homeowner still wants to get the most money for their home, but there's always going to be somebody who wants a discount, wants to shop at Walmart. There's always going to be somebody who wants to press the easy button and get it done. So that being the case, maybe maybe up to 20 to 25% of the market might be soaked up or taken up by Redfin and these iBuyer models, and it's probably going to be distributed mostly below the median price point.
Right.
So those are the big guys that are on the playing field right now in the lower end. So the bottom 25% of price point of the market. If then we go to the way to the top, we look at the upper end. The big player there, interestingly enough, right, is that you hear about on a lot in the news is Compass. Compass has been on a major buying spree. If you look at kind of what, and we received an offer from Compass, we elected not to take it because it didn't make sense financially, because we simply looked through all the numbers. Right. And if you didn't have the numbers, right, you might be excited by somebody saying, "Hey, here's a check for $500,000 of our stock," right?
Right.
But nonetheless, come back to what these guys are doing is they are buying luxury brokerages in prime markets across the country. Their plan, is to go IPO. If you want to know what a company's up to, check out who their leadership is and what they're known for. Robert Refkin, the CEO of that company, was a former Goldman Sachs guy, right? So he is a stock jockey. He's going to ride that thing, and like the Kentucky Derby, and get it across the finish line and engineer some valuation. And how they do that is they're going to buy agents, and they're buying predominantly luxury agents. So, and they've been successful in the acquisitions. There's some mess when you try to bring different companies together and just mash them all together. But they're doing it, and they're doing it in a big way. They claim that their market cap now is a couple billion. But I think when we look at what their potential is in the marketplace, is their stated goal is to gain 20% market share in the top 20 markets in the country by 2020. I don't think they're going to hit that, but with the amount of money they have behind them, and they're rapidly growing their agent count by this acquisition, they might catch 10% of the market, but I think it's going to be mostly concentrated in the upper end. If you look at the profile of those agents, they're guys or gals who members of the country club. I do 5 to 10 deals a year. It's most of my friends and families and people I hang out with. I'm not into this thing about having a sophisticated CRM. I just, I work my iPhone address book for deals. So if you are an agent that has a high-end luxury sphere, and you don't really want to be a high production agent, maybe Compass could be a good place for you. But I think that the interesting thing where that leaves us, right? We got 25% of that market concentrated in the lower end with Redfin and the iBuyers. We got 10% up there in the higher end that's probably going to be dominated by Compass. That leaves like a big 65% of the market hanging out around that median home price. And that's everybody and anybody's game. Right. The one thing, and this is where you and I maybe get into a debate here, is, we got to look at who commands the biggest consumer mind share in that space right now. Because clearly that 65% is like agents all over the country, different brokerages, some independent, some EXP, right, some, and if you look at mind share, Zillow commands over 60% is what their stated stats are of all first-time consumer search traffic for people going to bang on the internet to get information on real estate. And second to that, the portals we've got is Realtor.com. A new player in the space, actually not new, but they just gained a lot of market share, is HomeLight, right?
Yep.
So if we think for a minute or two here, kind of where those companies are and what they're doing, the first one that's a big one, Realtor.com, and their new partner, OpCity. Realtor.com used to just sell leads to realtors like Zillow does today. They figured out, hey, if we got a call center and we have people follow up with leads, what a concept.
Right.
Actually call a lead.
On a large scale, it's been fun to watch these big, huge companies come to the same conclusions that we had to as we built our teams, that there's got to be a better way to convert them.
Than just putting leads in the hands of realtors, right? And hoping that they'll call them.
Yeah, right. Got to be a better way.
We've all done that and lost some sleep over it. But OpCity, now created a call center, and Zillow's done the same thing with their Zillow Concierge. They realize, hey, if we warm these leads up and then hand them off to an agent, OpCity doing it on a referral fee, they thought, wow, we can really make some decent money off these leads. So I think that the big trend that's happening is the portals are moving towards, instead of buying leads from them, to a referral model, right? And we're seeing that with Realtor.com. Zillow, I'm a member of their advisory board, and they're clear that that's where they're going. I mean, if you're Zillow and you generate 1 million leads a month, the question is, who do you want to give those leads to? Do you want to give them to any old Joe or Jane agent? Do you want to give them to a broker? Or do you want to give them to a badass team leader who runs some tight team like the Cecile team in real estate sales that sells hundreds of homes per year and has good accountability and good culture and good systems?
Right.
And that conversation with Zillow is, they're basically saying we've kind of run the numbers, and both quantitatively and qualitatively, and we don't just want great conversion. We want a good consumer experience, which kind of comes back to what you guys at NAEA have always been committed to, was how do we articulate our value and deliver an awesome consumer experience. So Zillow's focused on that same goal, and they're measuring it. They're doing what smart business people should do. Let's measure all the things that we want to manage, and they're doing that now by surveying the consumer 24 hours after the lead or the call has been given to the agent, 15 days later and 45 days later. So they want to know that those people are being taken care of well. And then second to that, they want to know these agents can close these deals. So that's the metrics in which by they're measuring them. And if you're Zillow, you want to put the leads in the hands of those most capable agents. So when we started this call, I was saying I was excited. The reason I'm excited is for people like yourself and all the people that you guys coach and mentor, telling us to track our KPIs and what's our conversion rate for how many leads we generated, to how many appointments set, to how many appointments met, how many met to sign, to know those numbers. And ultimately where we are now as team owners, we might have been challenged at times, holding our people accountable to making the calls and following up. I know we have been at times, because sometimes we were shorthanded and I just had to keep giving leads to the guy that wasn't necessarily following up on the way he should. But that game's going to change, at least for people that are going to be looking to service Zillow's business. Where that opportunity lies is, at least in Zillow's perspective, they have 70,000 paying advertisers right now, agents who buy leads every month. They've already they've tested this model to move to a referral fee. They're rolling out in 4 markets this summer, and they plan to roll out the rest of the country by the rest of the year. They expect that the 70,000 advertisers will probably pare down to like 7,000 partners, and people who run great teams with great culture, with great systems that deliver a great consumer experience. So that's what they see happening. We see a similar thing. I think we'll follow suit with Realtor.com. I know, HomeLight is another entity that's not a portal, but they basically, their value proposition, if you go to their website, is we'll find you the top agent in any zip code you're in. You can't pay to be on our website. We crunch the MLS data. We'll show you who the best 3 guys or gals are to work with. So if you think about Zillow driving leads just to the best agents, and Realtor.com doing that, and HomeLight doing that, how much of that 65% of the market do those guys, I don't want to say control, because they're not agents, but how much of that do they influence?
Right.
Zillow's the biggest, one in the portal space. They said out of the 5 million homes that were sold last year, 5 million consumers that bought or sold a home last year, 4 of the 5 million went to Zillow at least some point in the process. Maybe not used a Zillow agent. 1 million of the 5 million people who went to Zillow at some point did connect with a premier agent. That guy or gal may or may not have bought leads, but they connected with an agent that was on the Zillow platform.
Right.
They also know that globally their lead conversion rates are about 2.5%. They about 2.5 out of every 100 leads turn into a closed sale within a year.
Shocking to know your numbers.
Yeah, interesting, right? Yeah. And they know their best agents or teams are converting at somewhere between 6 and 10%. Conversion. So if you're Zillow, you're going to want to put those leads in the hands of the best. And they think if they do that play, they can probably take that lead conversion from 2.5% to 5%. And if they do, that means of the 5 million people in the U.S., 1 million bought on Zillow. They can maybe get that up to 2%. So that would be they'd influence or participate in 40% of the real estate transactions in the country. And here's where I think the interesting thing is like, you get a lot of people who hate Zillow, like, they're selling me my damn leads and this and that. But reality,
Jason Williford's like, he's on a rant right here too. They just put a billboard up in his market in Atlanta, and we just had it in Mastermind. We just had a conversation about how to compete. And Jason and Tracy have been beating the pants off of Zillow because they're a major player in Atlanta, and so they're competing against it on a regular basis now. But they put a billboard up that basically says, let's see, sell your home without the hassle of an agent. In their marketplace, in their zip code, $17,000 a month billboard that's they're going up to directly competing against them with. So how do you feel about Zillow? Obviously, Zillow is an opportunity. It's an opportunity if you have a well-ran, efficient team. But now they're running billboards right up against you, and it's no different than in every market right now. Here in Dallas, like if you run on the radio, right behind your ad is going to be an open door ad, and right behind that's going to be a door.com ad for a $5,000. You drive down the road, there's a 1%, Zillow, Zillow billboards all over the place. It's competitive as all get out. So, is Zillow, talking out of one side of their mouth or are they being, what are you, do you have to work with them? You that the big opportunity is,
you obviously don't have to work with them. It's interesting because when my conversation with you, Jay, started in 2012, we started talking about disruptive innovation and companies that came in. I viewed Zillow with an evil eye, man. I did not want anything to do with them. We dabbled with them a little bit, and then when I thought about it, I said, "This is the damn disruptor that's just going to take us out. I don't want to, feed the beast that's going to eat me." And what ended up happening was I watched several teams in our market, because we have a tough market in Silicon Valley. It's one of the most educated, sophisticated consumer. Everyone's got an advanced degree. They're all too smart for their own good, and they don't respond to like radio ads and things. Right. A lot of the traditional channels that crush it for other real estate teams. And so, but I watched some players in our market really accelerate their growth with Zillow. And so that just, the mastermind concept, finding those people who were doing really well. What are they doing? How are they doing it? And how can we, model what they were doing? We used Zillow as a great growth engine to help us go, from 50 million to 150 million. And we did that in about 18 months. Not all of it was Zillow. It was about 1/3 of our business, but we harvest the lifetime value of each client that came through that funnel, because we work them for the referrals, create a great experience, et cetera, just like any other lead source. What I can say about what Zillow's doing with the Zillow offers in kind of some of these closed door meetings is, it's part of their business plan and part of their revenue model, but the margins on iBuyer are slim, and it does go negative in a down market. Their upside is that, like we talked about, the iBuyers, people only will take advantage of that iBuyer offer maybe 20% of the time. In some markets, it's probably like 5% of the time. That means 95% of the time, the consumer looks at that offer and says, that's good, but I think I'd like more. So Zillow, as they're positioning the iBuyer, is really as a listing lead generator, because it puts their premier agents in front of high intent sellers, right? Because typically the person who's responding to a cash offer value proposition on their home is a guy or gal that's like, man, I want to get it done. I want to get it done now. So that's
and who was offering those deals at what referral fee, 35%, something like that to an agent.
Yeah, they haven't finalized kind of what the fees are in every market across the country, but it's probably somewhere between 30 and 35. And for those teams that can achieve great conversion, they can cut it in half. They can cut that referral fee in half by driving, hitting certain conversion milestones, right?
Let me tell you what this reminds me of though. So, and I just made, I still don't like it.
Listen, I had a conversation with Homelight the other day when I got on the phone, and they go, "Man, your conversion dropped." I said, "Why are our lead counts down?" "Oh, well, your conversion dropped." And then I was like, "Wait, dude, I'm not in control anymore. I don't like this." So
yeah, that's not a good feeling.
But on the big picture, the same level, like what we've had in real estate, we've had it too good for too long. Like we had no flipping accountability about the quality of service that we delivered. You know what I mean? Like, and,
well, yeah,
and what,
so yeah, but Zillow doesn't control that. They're not. All they did was they made the right move and they got the eyeballs. And once you got the eyeballs, you can control everything after that. If you just that's what they've been trying to figure out is how far down the value chain they got to go. And so, but my issue with Zillow is they're running these billboards all over town and they're trying to get people to generate a lead. It's just like when we used to run the guaranteed sell billboards. What were we doing? We were trying to find people that was the easiest way for you to find a motivated seller. So now they're coming because Zillow, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe, I don't know what the percentages are. You probably would know, but the percentage of leads that you get that are straight up listing opportunities from Zillow versus buyer opportunities is dramatically different, right? There's way more buyer leads coming from Zillow than there were seller leads. Now they're trying to figure out how to go into the marketplace and do exactly what we've been doing with our own marketing dollars to generate those same seller deals for you, and they're doing it through their iBuyer program. That's what that to me is basically they took the same strategy that we've used across the country.
Yep.
Outside of your market, I will say Silicon Valley has a little bit different spin to it. There's no doubt. We tried a lot of different things that didn't work in Silicon Valley, but everywhere else in the country, all that stuff has worked consistently. Now they're going in and they're spending those marketing dollars to generate that lead and now turn that into a 35% referral. So, I still believe that, it's a damn good offer. That's the problem too. It's not that the offer's good. The message on the billboard is good. And if you can become the go-to source, like, hey, why would we go to Open Door first and see what they would offer us? Hey, why wouldn't we go to Zillow and see what they would offer us? If you get the consumer to think, do this first, then we're no longer in control of our opportunities. That's just the bottom line. And we're not in control of that. They could change their mind tomorrow and decide we're going to open a brokerage or we're going to do, this is just one step closer. And we had that conversation a long time ago. I can't remember who it was that originated the idea, but Zillow's not going to get into real estate because they're a media company, whatever the hell that is. And as a media company, their valuation would drop if they were looked at as a real estate company. So, they've gotten past that, and they are in the real estate industry now. So
yeah, they are a brokerage in 50 states.
Right.
They are a brokerage in 50 states. And so, here's where I think,
don't you think they're going to squeeze? They're just going to continue to squeeze. Oh, we can get 35%. We can get 40%. We might get 50%.
That remains to be seen. What's interesting is when I went to this last event they had, I met one of their new hires. This guy was super wicked smart guy. Came from Amazon, and he said, I was with Amazon when they were a big bookstore, and this guy teaches AI at University of Seattle or something as an adjunct professor. So, and he was saying, what's interesting, or we were just talking over a beer. He goes, what's interesting is he goes the types of conversations we're having with realtors and brokerages in the marketplace, and kind of a little bit of the fear about, are you guys going to just take us out? He says it is literally identical. The different players, different words, but the tone of the conversation is identical to what happened with Amazon when we pivoted from being a bookstore to distributing products. Because we first went to channel partners and said, hey, look, we go to Coca-Cola and said, hey, we want to distribute your products online. He said originally the people producing the products, hey, whoa, wait a second here. Are you just going to copy our stuff and then just distribute it? You're manufacture and distribute it yourself. And the guy was telling me, he's like, I can count on, I can't even count on two hands the number of my friends, people who've become close friends that kind of embraced the opportunity, and they had some of these things happening. Because I got a friend who's had a little warehouse, auto parts distribution warehouse in Seattle, And when Amazon started doing this, he's like, now that guy's got a 300,000 square foot auto parts distribution warehouse, does 30 million in profit per year, and Amazon doesn't want to own his business.
Right.
So
but they did, but to be fair, Amazon did. Half the stuff I buy now, I'm like, it's got an Amazon label on it. Like, what is this?
Oh yeah,
Amazon,
yeah. No, I mean
Amazon
they do. They will. And I mean, here's the deal. Like, things are going to change in our business no matter what. Right. The question is, like, what's the best move for you in the near to intermediate future? Because nobody knows the long range. We could do our best to create it, but hey, man, just ask.
There's I agree with the perspective that you should look closely at the landscape and look at where you might want to be positioned.
Yeah.
And as much as it might make a hair on your back of your neck stand up, and as much as you may lose control of a little bit of control of your business, it could be a tremendous opportunity for you as well, right?
Correct. I mean, here's what I think for sure too. What we know, the one thing that won't change is the emotional nature of the real estate transaction. The fact that real estate is still, even with all this technology, a relationship-based business because of the human element of it. Like, even if Zillow did double their conversion rates and now they participate in 40% of the transactions in the US, well, guess what? That leaves 70% for the rest. Even if, these other guys take it, like, you got 30% of the market, which is just sphere of influence. Interestingly enough, if I look at my business, and you look at probably a lot of your people's businesses, about a third of our business comes from paid lead gen. For us, it just happens to be Zillow, but a lot of people doing paid lead gen that are growing big businesses. About a third of it comes from open houses and farming, any kind of local stuff that we're doing related to a listing. And about a third of it becomes sphere of influence. I mean, if you're coaching an agent, Jay, if you're coaching a guy and he's got 80% sphere of influence business, he's got a marketing problem because he's not picking up from paid marketing channels. Right. So I think even if Zillow achieves their stated goal, there's still plenty of the pie that's going to be there for these relationships. I'm just looking at it personally from, okay, how do we best leverage the trends that are emerging in the marketplace, and how do we position ourselves on the playing field to get the biggest piece of the pie? Because Zillow doesn't care if you're with EXP or you're Coldwell Banker or you're wherever. What is true is because they're charging a pretty good hefty whack on that referral fee, it's putting a squeeze on the brokers and those that can't operate with a really efficient economic model and either a capping structure or low cost fee structure are going to be hard pressed, right, to survive. That was the one thing that was interesting in that Inman conference was a lot of the CEOs of the big box brokerages, man, those guys are nervous right now.
Yeah, I bet
they're a lot of them are teetering on the brink of, just not being around. So
let me ask you this then. So let's talk about what are the threats, and it would not be. I would feel like I'm doing a disservice to the real estate industry if I don't bag on Redfin a little bit on this conversation, just because I just despise Redfin. I think they're a really shitty real estate company that has a really cool technology. That's how I would classify them, and that's
they're a discount broker with like an awesome website.
That's
all. Discount broker with mediocre with AFAs. Staffed with AFAs.
It's the worst AFAs there are, too, by the way. I mean, it's not. These are the ones that couldn't make it even in selling 1 or 2 houses a year. That they had to go get a job and get paid a salary of $35,000 in many markets.
60,000 here, man.
Is it? Well, yeah. That's that's big money there. That's not big money there. But
not.
So they just launched out. Remax just killed their deal with them. They just announced that they did with this as a referral partner in areas where they didn't have agents that they were servicing, and they because they had launched this now you can buy a house directly on Redfin, and bless Glenn Kelman's heart, must be a really sweet guy, but he just has bought into this discount thing at such a high level. The race to the bottom is my least favorite. It's my least favorite, and because it's not focused around the consumer experience, it's not focused around what's best for the home buyer, the home seller. And from my understanding, you tell me if I got this right. They are basically offering a 2% discount if you go in the test market that they're in to buy the house directly with no representation for the buyer, and that Redfin will split that 2%, that big 2% money that you're going to save that a typical agent would get. And they're going to give 1% to the seller and 1% to the buyer, but there's no representation for the buyer in the transaction. Who's negotiating on behalf of the buyer? Nobody is. So that's their new thing that they just rolled out, which is beyond me, that they think that buyers don't want to be represented and don't want someone negotiating on their behalf and don't want to have someone that's, you know, that's showing them the property and managing that whole process. It just baffles me. But am I here? Did I describe that correctly, or have you looked into that?
That, I mean, that you know as much, or it sounds like maybe possibly more than I do about it, but that's my understanding of how they're executing that model. I think it's a totally, you know, it leaves the buyer, you know, flying out in the wind by themselves, a total breach of fiduciary duty. If you're a broker, encouraging somebody to do that. And here's where I think it'll probably end up shaking out, right? It's like, just like our real estate contracts, if you talk to anybody who's been in the business 30 years or whatever, we're in California, it's a litigious state. Our purchase agreement's like 13 pages and our listing agreement's like 12. I talk to guys that have been in the business 50 years, like, the purchase agreement used to be 1 page. Listing agreement was 1 page. Yeah. Every time a lawsuit happened, they added a paragraph, right? So I think something's going to happen with these, some of these innovations and these models where you get a few casualties and then people, think twice. But I think from the consumer's perspective, and who am I to say, dude? I'm a realtor. Speaking from my,
we obviously have a bias of a little bit.
We're biased, but if you look at other industries, whether it's stock brokerage, right? When the stakes are high, you want to have somebody's attention and interest and commitment and experience guiding you through that process. So if I'm buying $100,000 condo, and I screw it up, it might cost me $3 or $4 grand. But if I'm buying $1 million house here, a 3% slip on some kind of error or mistake, it's 30 or 40 grand. We're in a technology area. Redfin's a technology company. Tons of traffic, dude. Like when I go hold open house, how'd you hear about the house? Redfin.
Yeah, they're number 65 on the most trafficked websites right now on Alexa.
Yeah. I would say for the open house foot traffic that comes through, 65% of buyers say they saw the house on Redfin, but yet they have less than 1% of the transaction count. So people are using their technology, but not their agents, which just it's a testament, right? What do people want? They want a great online experience, and they want to work with them.
Here's what's going to happen. Redfin. First of all, my prediction is that they're going to have to get rid of Glenn Kelman if they want to make a change. But if they have the traffic, if they had good agents, no different than what Zillow's doing, how can they not look at that model and say, okay, well, Zillow tried to do it this way, and now Realtor.com is trying to do it this way. And if that's the direction that they're going, is putting the deals in the hands of great agents, when are they going to stop paying salaried crappy agents as part of their model and see that they have a huge opportunity to be a player in the game, but they just haven't? He's so dead set on the discount. The consumer wants a discount. That's the move that he can't let go of, is what it seems like, just from everything I've learned from watching him over the years. But it seems silly to me, but they could be a major player because they have the best tech. I mean, they do.
They do. Well, that's what's given them the foothold in the market that they do. And I mean, there's a certain segment of the population that will shop at Walmart because they just want, or because that's what they want, the cheapest deal.
Right.
And that's always going to be there. So I don't know. I think everybody, there's room for everybody.
What's the threat to Redfin?
Threat to Redfin. I think the threat to Redfin is like if they go to this model where they're letting buyers fly blind, that they get stung with some lawsuits or something because they're not representing people who should be represented.
Right. And how do you think they do in a downturn?
Well, I mean, experience tells us discount brokers pop up when markets peak, as they peak, and they get crushed when the market tanks, because dude, our market's flattening out and slowing down right now. And I've only got they're big listings, like $2.5 million listings. I got like 5 listings right now. Every one of them, I'm having 20-minute conversations with sellers, going through the data. Hey, look, this is the next move that you need to make because here's where the market's going. I'm sorry, but a guy or gal who makes 60 grand a year, doesn't necessarily have the influence. They might be some halfway smart people, but if you look at the disc profile of someone who's a great listing agent, they're high D and they're high I. They can relate to people and they can be assertive because they got to help and coach and guide that person to make tough decisions to get to where they need to go. And the person who's going to be a Redfin agent, right, that's going to gravitate towards that role, they're going to be a high SC. They don't have the confidence or the assertiveness to have those hard conversations with the buyer self. So if compensation drives behavior in that whole model, like, you know, they're going to I was going to say they're going to something the bed when the market really turns again, right, on the listing side, because people realize they get what they pay for when they do the 1% listing. But man,
yeah, I would agree. So like I looked it up prior to get on here because I couldn't remember the data. But I mean, Help You Sell grew like crazy in the early 2000s. I mean, they grew to 800 plus franchises, and they were, you know, even in early 2006, they were, you know, looking back, it was like we were on a path to bankruptcy, and I think there was a lot of middle management issues or something of that nature. But by 2008, they'd filed bankruptcy. So, you know, the minute the market shifted, dead. So, you know, it makes it really hard for you to go raise money in a market that starts to tighten up. So and I haven't seen a lot of data, and I haven't seen a lot of articles where, and maybe they did at this Inman disconnect. You know, what is the play for the iBuyer model as they move into you know, a market that shifts? I mean, it seems to be a tremendous threat to the model, and the gap between what they're offering and what they end up actually paying for the property could destroy the consumer experience to a point that they're like, the hell with this whole thing. And by the way, if you Google like iBuyer stuff right now, hell, there's ads for 10 different companies I've never heard of that are trying to pretend like they're iBuyers. So it could water down the market considerably, making the iBuyer thing, you know, really a little bit hard to, you know, to be that number one person you think of, you know, when you have to get an offer from someone. It's kind of like the guaranteed sale.
Couple things. I mean, clearly, you know, if you look at what the innovative cycle, right? What happens when a need emerges? You have all these people who crowd into the space, and then there's a lot of noise, right? Because there's, you know, a lot of similar companies trying to do the same thing, and then usually a consolidation will happen and one dominant player emerges. You know, there's probably a bunch of different, you know, online auction sites when in the .com era when eBay came out, but you know, now there's one. So that cycle will probably happen with iBuyer. And the ones that are the most well capitalized will do it. Now, the interesting thing, though, because that's an argument I've heard a lot about, like, hey, these iBuyers, as soon as we get a market turn, they're all going to be crushed and out of business. Well, you have to look at the funding source of where the money comes that backs these guys and what their perspective is. You know, the venture capital in the United States is different than the venture capital that comes out of Asia, partly because of the cultural mindset, too. You know, in Silicon Valley, it's kind of the Wild West. We had an era where, you know, people would do $10, $20 million, you know, fundings of these startup companies, and they'd pop for 100 million or whatever it is. But now we see like these groups coming in, and it's interesting if you look at the culture and what's behind it, it's interesting. Yeah. The Chinese and their belief in or view on venture capital is they have a long-term perspective. They think companies like Yelp and Open Table, right? Like these companies that are these little thin platforms are a joke. They say if you're really to do it right, what you do is, you know, if you're going to go into the food service thing, you deploy like $6 or $7 billion, not 10 or 20 million. And you create a food service group that's got Chinese and Asian, and each brand is in there, and you own the whole stack, right? From the app to all the restaurants and all the distribution. And these are the guys who are now investing in our platform economies. So the big funding source behind both at the bottom end of the market, Open Door, and at the top end of the market, Compass, is this group called SoftBank. Mayushi's son, the guy who invested, it was like Baidu or whatever the Chinese search engine was that he made his big money on. They have $100 billion fund. And so they put, you know, I think now close to $1 billion into Open Door. I'm sorry, $1 billion into Compass. And I think they're $3 billion into Open Door. So they're betting on both sides of that market. Yeah, and a lot of the money comes from the I think Public Qatar, some Middle Eastern group. So like they own a big piece of Uber, and they're aggressive venture capital. They don't say like, hey, here's a good business model, come pitch us. They go directly to companies that are on the rise, and they'll say, hey Jay, you know, I hear you got a great business concept. We want to give you 100 million. You're like, we're good, man. We don't need the money. And they go, okay, well, we're going to go give 100 million to your competitor. right? And then and that's how they do capital cram downs or equity cram downs and force these companies to take their money so they get these ownership stakes. So our platforms, our technology platforms like Airbnb, Uber, a lot of these things are getting like largely diluted with international ownership, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Right.
But I don't know. We totally took the conversation a different direction.
Right.
I don't know where that thread started. If we
they came from me asking you the question about what the threats are to these.
Yeah, the threats are that somebody else is going to own our whole real estate industry, business profession. They own it all.
Right.
That's our biggest threat. But on the threats to the iBuyer, their vision on venture capital, right, is they got a long-term time horizon. Like if they lose money for 3 or 4 or 5 years where the market crunches and they lose 3, 4, 5 billion, it's like no sweat off their back. The best example I heard about this was like, what you've said it, I think, profit on the way to disruption is simply a distraction. Most businesses exist for profit, but deep venture capital businesses, they go profit on the way to disruption is simply a distraction. Right. It's just diapers.com was a good example. I mean, Amazon, their investors, just ask their investors, like they lost money for 20 years, but they're happy now.
Yep. It's all about getting to that number one spot. I mean, I think Jack Welch had it right, man. If you can't play and be the number one, number two spot in a vertical, then you shouldn't be playing. And I see that strategy being deployed now with the amount of money that venture capital is going into some of these companies. Still don't agree with some of their strategies. I still question whether Compass will ever deliver on a. I know the consumer doesn't care necessarily about Compass because they're not managing the consumer experience. It's the agents that matter. So they're still in the same game as all of us. The question is, will they have a higher churn rate of agents with the way that they've done business and the way that they've poached agents and some of the lawsuits and things that came from that? It's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, it's an interesting game that's being played out there right now. I personally like EXP for a lot of reasons. If you're an agent that wants to be successful in selling real estate and be aligned with some of the top people in the country, there's a lot of benefit to being around the right people, and as we've always agreed on that one principle.
For sure.
Turning the model upside down in terms of instead of regionals, getting the percentage of revenue off the top and then go have franchisees and grow the company, giving that money back to the agents that help grow the company, and giving them an opportunity to create a passive income instead of just a few key people across the country and positions that don't necessarily drive growth at the level that a bunch of agents that are excited about a company can, is a really refreshing idea, and it's been working great as fast as we're growing. So yeah, man, it's say it again.
It's a cool opportunity.
It is, man. It really is, and it's fun too. So, but yeah, we definitely got to keep our eye on the one thing that matters most, which is, and you said this earlier, and I just wanted to make a point about it. Is when you understand the lifetime value of a customer, and you understand the lifetime value of a customer that you created as a raving fan, then if you have the opportunity to acquire a customer, even if it's through a 35% or 40 or even 50% referral fee, then that's not a bad thing. A lot of people would be willing to give up half of the fee to acquire a customer that has a lifetime value of what could be million, 10,000, 100,000, whatever it may be, over your average commission times how many referrals you get over the span of your career. So the opportunity is still there. Where all of us as real estate professionals should be focused on is, how do you create raving fans and a raving fan experience that's branded in a way around your value proposition, and so that they can go and tell people your value proposition, and you get referrals from those people at a much higher rate. So it's not that new person that you acquire. The value of your business is directly proportional to the value of your database and your communication and that you have with those clients and the relationship you have with them. And so, like, if you take that seriously, which I think a lot of I know you do, I know I do, and we know a lot of the top people in the industry do, then you have a much greater survival rate, and you can weather some of the storms that are coming ahead by making sure you maximize the lifetime value of a client, and you don't just look at it as a transaction. You look at it as the first 3% of the revenue that you could potentially get from taking care of that client for the span of your career. So that's the other piece I think people need to be focused on as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one thing that no matter what brokerage you're at, and what your paid sources of business are. We all have that equivalent opportunity in kind of optimizing and marketing to our sphere and harvesting the lifetime value of that client by just delivering awesome service. But in that, coming back to like why we got in the game, why I, when I first started, that first day when Alan Dalton said, hey, like there's a problem in this industry, and it is about elevating the consumer experience. I know you've been committed to it. I've been committed to it. Zillow that we're partnering with right now, they are committed to it. They realize their position in the consumer's mind is only as relevant as they can assume and hold that role of delivering a great consumer experience. So the thing I'm most excited about is if that becomes the predominant conversation of the industry and the focus of agents, because we're all getting measured, whether we're doing it ourselves or we're partnered with somebody who's feeding us business that's measuring that, like what gets measured improves.
That's right.
And what gets measured and reported improves dramatically. And what gets measured and reported publicly improves exponentially. And that's what my Trend J. Kinder is all about, is exponential growth.
That's it, baby. That's it. I love it, man. This was a great conversation, man. I appreciate you breaking out some time and having it with me. And as always, man, I love you, brother. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you and get some of your wisdom. So appreciate you, man. And we'll see each other probably soon. I'm sure one of these events coming around.
Yeah, if it's not from the top, it'll be at the top.
That's right. That's right, man. All right.
Later, bro.
See you, man.